think I'm live. Anybody in the chat? Oh, it says I'm not connected to the chat. That's new. I see there are viewers. If there's anybody who's in the chat who can text me to say that I am in fact live, I would appreciate that. Maybe it's not going. Give me just a second, folks. Of course, technical difficulties. I might need to restart the stream. We'll see how this goes. All right. Okay. I have confirmation that I am live. I can't see the stream or the chat, so I am not going to know if you say something. I don't know how that's going to go, but we'll see. Anyway, welcome to Patching at 3 a.m. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about feedback. And you can see that I've got a bunch of pedals here, and I'm going to be doing some interesting patches where I send signal through and back into them, and yeah, so we're gonna be playing with some obnoxious sounds, some cool sounds, and we'll see where we get. So when I talk about feedback, I think a lot of people know on like a delay pedal, you've got a feedback knob that recycles the sound back through the delay so that you get repeats. Not a lot of people know that your resonance control on a filter is also a feedback control. The difference is, or the main difference is that it's not going through a delay, it's going through filter circuitry, and instead of being, it's inverted polarity, the signal that is being fed back. And we can hear what that sounds like in a pedal. I've got this little drum pattern going. And so here's a filter without any resonance. 4-pole, low-pass filter, we all know what that sounds like. And so here is, of course, with that resonance, with that feedback, that negative feedback. So I've got this pedal that the filter is connected to. It's called Hors d'oeuvres from Fairfield Circuitry, and it creates a feedback loop with whatever pedals are connected through it, sends and returns. It then has a feedback control, wet control that includes the effect that's in the feedback loop, and then a dry control which is unaffected. So currently the feedback is positive, and as I increase the feedback, you'll hear a bass boost, and then eventually it'll start oscillating a little bit, right? But as I adjust the filter, it doesn't have the kind of effect that you would expect from resonance. You know, it kind of attenuates the level of the oscillation, but it doesn't change the frequency as much as you might expect. And also it does that bass boost, which is, I mean, basically when the filter is open, this is like sending feedback through just a gain stage where you're similarly going to get, you know, the level is going to increase, the bass is going to increase. So now that's in the positive setting. If I set it to negative, now when I increase that feedback, it sounds a lot more like the resonance control on the filter itself. And and it's not exactly the same as a resonance control. I mean, clearly the resonance on this filter is more aggressive. There must be some kind of clipping stage or something in the feedback path that kind of makes it a little bit grittier and more aggressive. But that's kind of the cool thing about using an open feedback loop to create your resonance path instead of using the filter, is now you can introduce other effects into that feedback loop. So for example, now I have this is a clone of a Zvex Fuzz Factory. And so that's coming after the filter, going into the pedal, and then the output of the pedal sends the signal back into the filter. So let's kick that in and see what that sounds like. Yeah, we all know the Fuzz Factory can be particularly chaotic, even without feedback. But if I dialed that feedback back, now this is basically what it sounds like if there weren't a feedback loop, if it were just the effect being routed serially through. And so as I add feedback, you can hear it starts to oscillate more, and depending on the frequency of the filter, it kind of that's where the feedback is kind of, because this resonance is kind of like think of it like a channel where the pressure of the sound is being focused. And so you think of the, typical low pass filter curve, and that peak in the filter is the dominant frequency where feedback is going to build up. Let's see. These two knobs are an active tone shaping filter that I added along with a op-amp boost that gives me a little more juice out of the fuzz. And so I can just turn the pattern off and it'll self-oscillate. Give me some interesting sounds that way. The Fuzz Factory has like a weird gate and some weird properties to its old germanium transistors that make it just kind of freak out and do weird stuff under feedback. and I really enjoy that. I'll just, you know, sit here, you know, dialing away at something that isn't even a synthesizer, but getting weird tones out of it. Speaking of getting weird tones out of non-synthesizer modules, so another weird guy that I like to mess with is this Electro Harmonix 2BQ, and it's connected to this 4x4 passive matrix mixer. Let's see how I have this connected. This is acting as an output. Any of these can be an input or an output since it's passive. So, you know, I gotta check how things are connected. But I'm using these as the output to go into the distortion. The distortion then goes into the 2BQ. And then the 2BQ goes into an input on the mixer. And then I'm gonna replace the signal that's connected to this pedal and do that here. And so, woo, lots of bass, right? So here it's an EQ with two shelves, a treble and a bass, and I have those both turned all the way down. It's like a guitar amp. Those bands only attenuate. You can't boost them. And then it has the mid band, which is what is got the tubes in it, and that gives me a frequency control and the gain for the band pass and Q control. And so right now, without the distortion, it's not giving us much activity, right? But as soon as I kick this distortion in, now it's acting as an oscillator. And that's because of the clipping stage that's added. The 2BQ just doesn't like some levels and will kind of crap out if it's, you know, getting like uncontrolled feedback for some reason. So the distortion kind of limits the headroom in the audio signal path, and that is another kind of way to focus the feedback and kind of allow it to build up. And again, you know, I can change the frequency here. I can so I just increased the bass band. You can get some really interesting effects just from this 2BQ, you know, acting as an oscillator. This 2BQ happens to have an expression pedal input, which you can abuse with CV connected just to the tip connector of a 1/4-inch cable. So I don't have something that I can demonstrate with at the moment, but this can become a voltage controlled oscillator that way. So this pedal, this distortion pedal, is a clone of the MXR Distortion Plus. I called it the D-. In this switch position, I've got a germanium diode, and in this position, I've got an LED, and it gets much heavier and more brutal. And run that through the filter with a fuzz factory. You hear these synths have like really, really small sweet spots where it'll just start doing something crazy like this, and like, I'll just sit here dialing these things in for a while until I find something cool. See what it sounds like. I don't know if you guys have had enough of this kind of nonsense. I can do this all day. This is my jam. Anyway, so that's playing with feedback, instantaneous feedback with pedals. So, not incorporating a delay at all, just using filters to kind of guide the where the audio energy builds up. So as another example, I actually do have a delay, and let's see, I just got a text from somebody. Let's not important. I'm just trying to keep an eye on my text in case the stream dies or something, because again, I'm not seeing what's going on in the chat, so I don't know. So okay, what we've got going on right now is rings into clouds. No, not rings into clouds. Rings into an Electro Harmonix Memory Man Deluxe TT tap tempo. And so right now, I've got a little bit of feedback going on with a kind of tempo synced delay patch. If I turn the feedback up, you can hear it build up. We all love that runaway BBD delay feedback sound. So the really neat thing about this particular delay pedal is it has an open feedback loop itself. It has a send and a return, and so I can connect a bunch of pedals through that delay. So in this case, I've got a Electro Harmonix ring thing, which is a ring modulator, a balance modulator, frequency shifter. It can also do pitch shifting, but I've got this Boss pitch shifter PS5, which is pretty lo-fi pitch shifting, which is kind of why I prefer it. And then of course the venerable Moog MF3 super awesome phaser effect. And so right now you're not hearing any of them. So I'm gonna kick in the frequency shifter. And so you can hear this kind of modulated barber pole pitching effect, but what a frequency shifter is close to more close to a ring modulator, and it uses a quadrature modulation source to modulate the positive and negative sides of I'm spacing on the term, but it's like a ring modulator with two signals out of phase, and it kind of changes the frequency of the signal by adding to it rather than multiplying it, as would be the case with a pitch shifter. So as I change the frequency of the frequency shifter, you get some kind of tremolo effects, almost kind of warbly effects at the very low end, and that I just think that sounds really cool. You know, having only the repeats kind of have that modulated effect. So I'm sure a lot of us have heard what pitch shifter sounds like in the feedback loop of a delay, but a really primitive pitch shifter in the feedback path of a BBD delay, it just sounds really neat to me. I mean, I think it sounds fantastic. And you know, give it some more juice. So that's one octave. That's 2 octaves. Come on. This is like a fifth. I really, really love those kind of ascending, you know, here I'll so rings into a cloud of pitch shifted delays. All right, so that's the pitch shifter, and now this is my favorite. So phaser in the feedback loop, and so because of the way the phaser works, it's, you know, inverting the phase, you know, above a certain frequency, above the cutoff frequency. It's actually gonna attenuate the feedback. So I'm going to need to increase the feedback on the pedal itself to hear the kind of effect. But what I love about running a phaser in the feedback loop of a delay pedal is how it kind of makes the repeats diffuse. You know, diffusion and like a reverb happens in a couple of different ways. You know, you could have modulated delays, but you know, some reverbs are based on all pass filters and large numbers of all pass filters, and how they cause audio to kind of diffuse when in a feedback loop. And so this phaser only has 12 stages. It doesn't have, you know, like 50 or 60, you know, however many you need to really disperse the sound. But I'll stop talking in a second so that you can kind of hear the way each repeat kind of pulls apart as it... Oh man, this is yet another kind of patch that I could just sit here all day and I'll switch to the lower band so it kind of does a reverse barber pole, it kind of dives downwards. And then here's with a ring modulator in the feedback path. Just kind of makes it more clangorous. And then at really low frequencies, the ring modulator is modulation source is like an LFO, and so now it's acting more like a voltage control over the feedback. So you'll hear some notes have a lot of repeats and other notes have none, and that's because the ring modulator is controlling the actual level of feedback. And that's a really neat effect too. So I think that's it for this station. I have a whole other station of things to show you. So let's move over there. Okay, so I'm gonna mute that guy. And yeah, okay. So we're still good here. And I'm hoping to do a little performance for you guys after the demonstration part. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so this is the setup that I use for kind of ambient feedback based performances. And there are a number of things here, and a Coma Field Kit, a Coca Quantus. This is a signal generator. It'll be part of the performance, but it's not part of the feedback stuff. I've got this Empress Zoya that I use for looping and for some reverb and effects and modulation and stuff. And then you'll notice that there are a set of speakers, and those are connected to a little amplifier. I mean, this is probably like $20 or $30 worth of parts from AliExpress or something like that. And the signal from the Coca Quantus is multed out to the field kit so that you can hear, and then to these speakers so that I can create some feedback. So without further ado, here's some feedback. So what this is, little shaker box. It is a mint tin, and I don't know if you can see this, but it has a piezo pickup inside. It also has a bunch of little fasteners in there, so I can shake it around. It's got some Velcro on top so that I can make some crackling sounds, right? And when, it's not going to pick up sound from the air, it's mainly going to pick up vibrations from whatever surface it's on. So when I set it near the speaker, feedback starts to build up. If I touch it against the speaker, crank it up a little bit more. There we go. And depending on, you know, where you put it, you get different frequencies, different amounts of volume. And you know, it's sometimes you can find a spot where you get like weird modulations. I think you really gotta dial in sweet spots. Again, this is one of those things where it's like you're not gonna find like a range of values that like all have really cool sounds. It's about digging deep and finding where little sweet spots are where you start getting weird intermodulations or things like that. But you know, you can kind of brute force it by doing something like this. Now I'm playing back a looping segment of that sound here. And so that's going through the speaker. And when I now turn up the volume for the piezo again, the sound that's already coming through the speaker is going to excite the piezo, but so that's going to influence the feedback that we get. Kind of hear the bass of the feedback throbbing with the modulation of amplitude from the speaker, and then I can kind of re-record that. Maybe do something to playback of that sample. You got something approaching interesting? I don't know. You tell me. Yeah, so you know that's another way. You know, using acoustic feedback. I mean, we're all familiar with the bad kind of feedback that you don't want, acoustic feedback. Yeah, that kind. But you know, if you have ways to control the amount of signal that is getting through to the microphone, pickup, whatever it is, then it becomes controllable within a low volume environment. I can't really demonstrate that, you know, that these speakers aren't very loud. I mean, they can be loud, but the whole purpose of using small speakers and using a surface to conduct the vibrations is so that I can keep the volume low and controllable while still playing with that kind of out of control guitar microphone feedback kind of vibe. There are a lot of other ways to do that, and I think I'll explore more of that in future episodes. I like to play with something called a surface transducer, which is very similar to, like, you know, if a piezo is to a microphone what the surface transducer is to speakers, if that makes any sense. It's a something that instead of a speaker cone that's intended to push air, it vibrates a surface, and I like using that with like cymbals and things where I can attach a string to the plate of it and move it in front of a guitar pickup. And, these are all ways to kind of control feedback and keep it a manageable volume so that I mean, I am still in my home and I don't want to bother neighbors with, a full, tube amps worth of guitar feedback kind of stuff. Anyway, okay, I'm rambling again. Excuse me. Give me just a second. I'm gonna turn this setup around, and I'm gonna do a little performance for you. What time is it? It's 2:35. Yeah, I think I've got another few minutes in me, and I can do a little bit of a performance for you. Just bear with me here. I'm getting tangled already. Told myself not to do that. Alright. This guy goes over here. Okay, speakers are in position. Alright. Okay, so I'm gonna cut the lav off because you're not going to need it to hear me. Hello? Should be able to hear me now. Reverb. Oh, goodness, there's one more thing I need. All right, I'm back. Back. Okay, get some levels.